Hey, it's Ted. Welcome back to another installment in the Skoolie conversion process. Today's Saturday and we're continuing to work on the electrical. Hope to get some wires pulled today. Alright, one thing I wanted to do with the wiring process is figure out where I'm going to put my three-way switches. So I'd love a switch near the door. When you come in, you can hit the overhead sort of kitchen living room lights and then shut them off as you go to bed. So I got some three-way switches kicking around, and I got them set up so that they work here. So that's all good. They get kind of a loose connection, but I also kind of thought, I mean, they're actually a lot smaller than I thought. And I thought maybe I'd like to put them on the dimmers because I wasn't sure how bright the LEDs or how harsh they would be. But I hooked up this dimmer switch and it doesn't work. So I'm not sure if it's a function of the regular switches will work okay on 12 volts and dimmers won't. I don't know, I have to do some more research on that. But I kind of figured out my travelers. So I'm going to make sure that I have a wire that can run both switches. Alright, so when hooking up three-way switches, you bring the power into the initial load here, the black screw, and two traveler wires to the brass of the first switch, and run both these travelers to the other brass screws of the switch, and then to the black lead of the second switch, run that out to the power input of your load. Here's my lights. And then because this is a 12 volt, I just ran the negative back into the battery, but when I actually install them in the bus, I'll put that on the chassis, probably on the ribs. Okay, we're running the 12 volt circuit now. We've got most of the 120 volts, so that's the outlet run across. This is going to be heater closet, pantry, and the refrigerator closet, so all that stuff's going to be buried in behind there. So that circuit's going to come all the way through here and terminate in the sort of electrical closet there. And then this 120 volt circuit is run, so all those outlets are ready to go. And I need to run one more to get across over to that side, but ran out of blue conduit again. So Julie's untangling wire.
A mess of wire.
It's a mess of wire. This was it's actually really good stuff. This is what was running the flashers, the bus warning flashers, but it looks like it's 12 gauge, and so that's pretty thick stuff, and we might as well use it. It looks good. So let's.
I'm gonna try to put it.
Oh, that new! The dog alarm went off. Hey! So I want to do a dry run with before I start running through the conduit, just to make sure they haven't forgotten anything. So I think we're gonna work on laying out all the wires where they think they'll be, and make sure, okay, yeah, that's where this is going to go, and that's where that's going to go, and this is where we're going to have a branch circuit. And so do all that before we start running through a conduit, and it's easier to fix that way. Or at least we can find the mistakes ahead of time. Consider it a rough draft. Two of these, because we need two travelers to go to that three-way switch down there. So get another yellow wire, run a tandem one, and these will be our two travelers. Alright, so I'm going to talk out loud so you guys can hear what I'm thinking, and then Julie can hear what I'm thinking, and I can hear what I'm thinking, and then if it makes sense, maybe we'll move ahead. If it doesn't. So we'll take one of this branch wire, we'll cut it off actually, but it will go from the fuse panel into the power of this switch, power leg, and then two traveler legs. So we've got these two wires will be the travelers, and they'll go from this box up through this conduit, into this box, down this conduit, all the way to the switch. As you go up the stairs, bloop, hit the switch on, and that, so
all these lights will come on.
Yeah, so those two travelers will go to the traveler lugs of that switch, and then we need another switch, another wire to go from the power switch back up and to the power leads of all the lights.
To each of the lights.
To each of the lights.
Okay.
back again today, working on the 12 volt light system. So I run a circuit into the bedroom here. Woo! I got a power lead here, and then the rest of it I'd run another circuit down back into the garage. It runs to that switch, and then sort of back up here to the different lights. I'm not sure if that's the most convenient place for the switch. It'd be nicer to have it down low, but that's going to involve sort of drilling through that and figuring out how I'm going to frame that. And I figured, well, I'll just get it up there for now, and I mean, it's a box. If I have to extend it, I can use it as a junction box and move it down. But that's what we're going to do. So kind of working on now and just linking all these lights together here in the bedroom. Told you the idea of taking the red flashers and wiring those in the ceiling, but maybe that'd be too weird. Be fun. So I'm going to cut this wire here and make a pigtail connection so that I can have the power come in and one branch split off and go and feed the lights in this bay, and the other branch continue on and feed the lights from this bay. Again, this power lead is coming from this switch right here. So I'm going to cut it, give myself a little bit of room so that I can, just so we can have some extra wire in case I need to, and I can tuck it back in there afterwards. So, cut, strip this back, about a little over 1/4 inch. This one too. I'm gonna need another wire. That worked marvelously well. Grab this, strip this wire too. So these pigtail connectors are bigger at one side to put the double wire on, and then smaller on the other part. I know some people use T connectors, but I haven't heard great things about them. They tend to fail. So I suppose these might too. But twist those ends just a little bit. Twist these wires around each other a couple times, both with the insulation part and the strip part. Alright, twist the two wires together I want, put the bigger end of the pigtail connector in. Put the single end on the other end. I meant to get a heat shrink crimp connectors when I got them, and I don't know if my brain was thinking about too many different things or hit the wrong button or whatnot. But so since I don't have the heat shrink, I'm just gonna take some extra measure here and put some electrical tape around it just for some extra security and moisture protection. think putting everything in these junction boxes will make it a little bit easier to get to, but I'd really rather not if I don't have to. So that'll all tuck into that box. And that will go on there like that. Also been playing around a little bit with just using zip ties. Secure the stuff up to here to the ceiling. Gonna sit in there kind of like that. Oops, that broke. It's all right. So it's gonna be up in the ceiling anyway. I don't know if that'll work, but I'll try it. And I'll make another pigtail from this power lead to get lights there and there. Alright, the rough wiring is just about done. We've got the lights all set up, coming down through here. So with 12 volt circuits, you have basically two wires. Well, you do have two wires. You have the power comes in through the positive, and you go to the negative, or kind of the ground. And you can run a full circuit where you run from the power positive from the panel all the way to the device, to the load, to the light, and then all the way back. Or you can ground it to the chassis of the vehicle, and then at the panel it's also grounded to the chassis, and that's what completes a circuit. And it makes a lot more sense for me to ground everything right there and saves a ton of wire. The other advantage of that is if you calculate your DC wiring runs, you have to, if it goes through a conductor or wire, you have to calculate the entire length there and back, which makes, you have to use a lot thicker wire. So fortunately my lights are in a great place on the ceiling where I can ground them. So I'm going to ground them right here. Got a nice screw there, so I don't have to drill another screw. So I have to make a bunch of pigtails to ground from where the light's going to be, there to here. Alright, so now that I got them all cut to length, I got all the ends stripped off, and now I'm going to crimp on these eyelets. I can screw them right into the ribs and then hook this tail end to the negative end of the lights, and we'll be in business. Alright, so we're going to do a test run here before we really start closing things in. So I got a couple switches here. Hook up our two travelers to the brass. And then put the power to the power side. The black screw. Okay, over at the other end here, we'll get the battery. Took the negative up to, it's one of the grounds we had hooked up before. And I got a switch here, I got the travelers hooked up already. Hook up this power lead to the switch. Then kind of the moment of truth that always makes me nervous. We got the lights hooked up down there. So now we flip switches and see what happens. Oh, I think they work. Huh. Here. Oh. I'll show you. That light's on. Headlights on, very exciting. And more exciting is if I hit this switch here, will that light go off? Oh, it does! And back on. Woo! Victory. Okay, rough wiring is just about done. A couple little odds and ends to finish up, and then, you know, obviously tidy up the wires. I will you know, kind of tape them together, and I'm gonna baggie them over for when we do the spray foam insulation, clean that stuff up. But it looks like everything is working, so that's awesome. So a couple of big takeaways I think from this project. I am happy I went with a conduit. Big reason is that, you know, we will be in the bus, you know, not full time, but you know, there could be stretches of 3 or 4 months we're not in it, and that's just a recipe for rodents. In any of my experience around, rodents find a way to gnaw wires. In fact, when I bought the bus, there was some shorts and some mouse chewings in the console that I had to fix. So I figure I protect the wires as much as I can. Second, because we ran the stranded wire, the code calls for it, and it's supposed to have it in there. So I was happy to do that. And so again, just tried to do as much as I can, and I did run strings through a lot of it, so in case I need to pull another wires I can. So I'm happy I went with it. It's pretty good stuff. It went pretty well. I will say that it was weird at Home Depot. It was $10 for 25 feet as opposed to $20 at Lowe's or Amazon. You know, and so and again, I'm an Amazon affiliate, but I'll tell you right now, go to Home Depot and get it if you can, if that price stays the same. But right now, yeah, Lowe's had run out, so I hadn't run over to Home Depot because I had some. Like, holy cow, it's like half price over here. So maybe don't tell anybody, maybe keep that a secret. But I'm happy with the conduit. One thing I did find that the junction boxes were really convenient as far as making short runs. At the same time, it was hard to pull wires through them. So what I ended up doing is sort of snapping them out, pushing the conduit through the shorter sections and pull it, and just kind of piecemealing as I went through, rather than the big long, well, I had one long run, but that seemed to work pretty well. And then I guess the other thing is when I pulled the flashes out, there was a nice big thick wire, and at the time, you know, I didn't really compare it. I thought, oh, that looks like it has to be 12 gauge. I couldn't imagine you'd run a higher gauge than that. But actually I think it's 8 gauge. And so I originally thought, oh, I had to, you remember the old Tim the Toolman Taylor show, as some like grunting going on, more power, and I thought, yes, big wire, and we'll make sure that we have plenty of wire in there, but it was just too thick to run through all the junction boxes. It kept getting hung up, and made it really tight, and I had a couple weren't super long enough, so I wanted to splice them, with my travelers, but then I couldn't pull the splices through, so I ended up pulling all that out, and I went with a 12 gauge wire, which is plenty big. When I did the calculations, I really only needed 16 gauge, but I had the bigger wire. I figured, why not use it? So that seemed to, I had to go some backwards to go forward again, which kind of what I do a lot of, so I'm used to it. It just took me a long time though. But that's it. I think those are the things that the takeaways coming through. I'm excited to get on to the next phases of, I guess I have to get some other loose ends to figure out, and then I'll be doing some rough plumbing, and then we can start doing some of the finished stuff. The insulations is going to be in another week or so, so once the spray foam's in, I can do the ceiling, and then I can start building the cabinets for the refrigerator and the heater and the kitchen cabinets. But again, probably 2 weeks away from that, or at least a week. So long drawn out ramble at the end. Sorry about that. Hopefully it was useful for you. Please ask any questions or comments. Really, it's all for me, because I want to make sure I really understand what I did. So if you ask comments and I can't answer them, then I know I probably ought to go back and check something. But if I can't answer them, then it means maybe I actually kind of knew what I was doing. So it's really all for me. It has nothing to do with you guys. But I certainly appreciate all the support. A lot of views lately and people checking in. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And again, subscribe, like, do all those things. And I will see you again in the next installment. Thanks for watching.